Hey, welcome back. I hope you're all well, and thanks for tuning in again for one of these repairs. Hopefully it's a success today. Today on my bench I got a Panasonic car stereo. This is a, what is this again? It's a CQ7600 EC. Not much to say about it. It's an AM/FM cassette player. Has a built-in equalizer in the front, which is kind of cool. This one is special in that it has the capability of connecting amplifiers to it. So it has a biamp switch on the front. I'm not really sure what this does. Biamp to me means you have two different amplifiers running your outputs, one for the low frequencies, one for the high frequencies. But that might mean something else in this context. I'm not sure. A couple buttons are missing. The DX local sensitivity button is missing, and the biamp button it should have one of these little square rectangular chromed plastic buttons, but it's missing. There's nothing I can do about that. Cassette, it's not auto reverse, it's just a regular play through, and it has fast forward and rewind. It's kind of a convoluted method of working that control. Even they had to put a little sticker on top to explain it to you how to work, which is no big deal. The owner of this wanted me to go through it. He says it's working, and he says it's got scratchy pots. So he wants me to open it up, clean the pots, and he assured me everything else was working, but we'll test it anyway. And it's probably a simple fix of just cleaning the heads and you know, deoxing the pots and giving it back to him. But I want to make sure it's all 100% before I do give it back to him. He wants to use this. I think he's restoring a classic pickup truck, and he wants this to be the audio system in it, which is nice. This is a 1979 vintage car stereo, and I spent about an hour yesterday looking online for any kind of a owner's manual, service manual, and I came up empty other than what I could buy on eBay. I'm not going to spend $20 plus shipping on a manual for a repair for a customer. It's not going to happen. So we go in and work blind like we usually do. This presents a little bit of a problem though. I can't just power this up and try it out because if I look at the back, we have an antenna input, a green wire, what I don't know what that does, and then we have two which look like proprietary connectors. They're 8-pin locking DIN connectors, and there's no way to feed power into this, and there's no speaker outputs, there's no line outputs. So he was thoughtful enough to include the amplifier that goes with this, and this is a Panasonic CJ5000. Don't really know any specs on this thing. Again, I looked for a manual on this power amplifier. I couldn't find anything. But it looks like I have enough here to get it wired in and get it powered up and figured out. So it should be okay. One of the other things he requested from me is these cables here are only about 4 feet long. And he wants to run the head unit in the dash, obviously, and then he wants to run the amplifier behind the seat of the pickup truck. So he's going to need at least 7 or 8 feet. So he asked if I could take one of these cords, if it's redundant. There's 2 cords here, and I think this is the biamp option. I think you have the option of putting 2 amplifiers on it. Now, I'm not sure if these run in tandem or if they run independently, but he says if it's possible, hack one of these off and then use the cord to extend the other cord. So it shouldn't be a problem. That easily done if that's the case. I'd have to go in and see all the connections, if they're just cloning the connections and coming out of the cables the same, or if there's definitely a difference to what these cables do. I'm not sure. Like I said, I don't have manuals. I wanted to at least get an owner's manual to read up on how to install this and configure it, and read up on the biamp portion of it, but That's not going to happen anytime soon. Without anything else going on here, I think first thing to do is to try and figure out this amplifier. Like I said, I got no documentation whatsoever. I just got a bunch of wires coming out the back. I got one connector for the input. I don't know what these wires do. These two wires here, if I read these tags, it says from tape player's left speaker lead. Okay. And this one says from tape player's right speaker lead. So these are speaker level inputs. And then there's a red wire. I don't know what the red wire does. To tape player's main power lead. Okay, so if you want to use a tape head unit to power this amp, these are your speaker level connections. So we don't use those. We're actually, yeah, if this was my unit, I'd probably just end up cutting those off because I would never use them if you have this input. And then on here, we got a bunch of fuses. Let me see if I can get this in frame. 4 amp fuses on these two. And this says left speaker. And this one says nothing. So I'm assuming that's right speaker, left speaker. And they're fused at 4 amps. It's quite a heavy fuse for the outputs. Black wire obviously is ground. And the yellow wire is pretty thick. I think that is a power wire. It's got a big fuse in here. Let's have a look at this fuse. It's pretty hefty. 20 amp, okay. So that's our main power feed. And then there is a blue wire that says to accessory terminal of ignition switch. Okay, this shuts the thing on and off. This is a 3 amp fuse. And there is a fuse in here, I'm assuming. Yes. Okay, I'll check that later. So I think we're good. I'm going to hook this up and see if we can get this powered up and working. Hopefully I got enough power supply here to power this thing. It looks like if it's sucking 20 amps at 12 volts, you know, we're into the 100 watt range, 50 watts a channel maybe, I don't know. But they have 4 amp fuses on the outputs, so it's pretty heavy duty. All right, a bit of a spaghetti mess here. We got everything hooked up, speakers, 2 sets of speakers, bench speakers. Got the power hooked up to the main power, yellow and ground. The deck's plugged in. If I turn it on, it's drawing about 10 milliamps right now. And I got it set to, let's set it to about 14 volts. It's typical car voltage. And I'll turn this on, and we got nothing. Okay, so I think this blue wire comes into play. We need to connect this blue wire up. Let's try that. Let's twist these together. Okay, so we're still drawing about 10 milliamps. The thing's switched off. Turn this on. Okay, so we got some life here. I think it tripped my power supply. Let's see here. Try it again. Yeah, it's drawing about 1.6 amps. 1.6 amps, and how do we switch this from AM to FM? I don't know. Something's going wrong here. So I have a loose connection or a short. I'm wondering about the grounding here. Try this again. Looks like we might have to do a repair before we do anything else. getting anything on the radio whatsoever. Okay. Well, we're getting a signal through the amplifier. A little bit of scratchy pots in the fader. I think the switch here is how we switch bands. But we got no AM whatsoever. No AM, no FM. Let's get a cassette and try it. This one's just test tones. Test tones. No motor. So we got a lot of work ahead of us here. This is not what it turned out to be. No motor, no AM, no FM. But we do have a little bit of signal flow through the amp. And the scratchy pot here on the fader. And really nothing on the volume though. You would think the volume would be the scratchy one. Okay. Yeah, we got a lot of troubleshooting ahead of us here. I don't know what that does. That's tuning. AM, FM. Fader. It's dead now. I'm drawing 1.56 amps. And the amplifiers are quiet. When I remove the tape, the amplifier comes back. Well, there's a bit of scratchiness. Alright, so we're looking at the cover. It really doesn't tell us much. It's got some kind of a wanky diagram here. Doesn't tell us how to hook anything up. It's just a block diagram. I don't know why they even put it on there. They would have been better if they put some wiring schematic on here, how to wire it up. That would have been better. But to power supply, noise filter. It's got a little frequency response curve here from 2 Hertz all the way up to let's see, 330 or 40 kilohertz. Seems starts to drop off. That minus 3D point is right at about 30, well, about 50 kilohertz. So it's not bad for what it is. Looking at the, here I want to show you this one too. This is really not very interesting, but it's just a tag, the model number, serial number. Runs 4 to 8 ohm loads. Pretty much it. Now I open it up, and it's fairly typical layout for this kind of a power amplifier. It has 2 sections, and right down here the middle is the dividing part of it. There's 2 beefy transistors here, 2 beefy transistors here. Those are the right and left complementary pairs, right and left. I don't know which is which, doesn't matter. And on this side we have what looks like a power inverter. It's probably taking in the plus 12 volts, and there's a big relay transformer here, fairly huge. There's some nice large semiconductors. They're doing some switching and rectifying, and it looks like some 35 volt caps on this side. So maybe we got 35 volt output. Let's flip it over and look at the back side. If I turn it on, we could be able to measure the let's turn it on. Turn on the power supply. And turn on the head unit. Okay, there it goes. Okay. Let's see what kind of a voltage we're getting here. It seems, where are we? Collector to collector, we got 0. There we got 65 volts there. And half of that would be, I don't think they're using the case ground as a reference. It's probably plus minus 33 volts. Let me see if I can get a measurement here. Yeah, there's minus 33. I think this side is plus 33. So we're getting a plus minus 33 volts. Runs the power amplifier. Power amplifier is everything on the right hand side. Power inverter is everything on the left hand side. Looks like maybe some things have been cooked a little bit. I'll shut this off. So I'll go through and I'll check capacitors first of all. I want to check all these solder joints, but it's really filthy. I'm going to have to get some clean all this flux off because it's just a mess here. And we'll clean that off, and we'll get a magnifying glass. We'll look at all these connections, make sure they're 100%. Car starters are notorious for having bad solders, and this would be no exception, I think. So we'll go through and make sure it's 100%. So these caps, you can tell, like, look at this cap here. It's got the sleeving is slid down, and you can see the same thing here on this cap and this cap here. It looks like these seen some heat. It's probably because the amplifier was mounted in this direction and all the heat rose. These caps stayed cool, these caps got hot. But this is one of the 1000 microfarad power filter caps for the power amp rails, the plus minus 33 volts. This one measures at 666 microfarads. It's a devil cap. I'm going to throw it away. Get another one. The ESR a little high on this one too. Mainly I want to get these caps out so I can clean this circuit glue. It's everywhere. I'm going to get rid of all this circuit glue on these old caps, and make sure that this is going good here. I'm going to check this again, check these other ones, and I might get into this too. There's a few little caps in here. I'm going to make sure that this thing's running 100% before I give it back to him. Yeah, this one's bad, but we can fix that easy enough. The main thing is I want to get the circuit glue out. I see it's on a few of the caps here. I remove these two and clean those out. I don't want any future problems from that conductive circuit glue. Okay, so what I've done is I recapped six capacitors. These all tested bad, and these are 1000 microfarad, 35 volts. 1000 mic 35, 1000 mic 35. They were all in the secondary side of the inverter, and the the plus minus supply rails for the amplifier. There was 2 1000s for the positive, 2 1000s for the negative, and I put in a 2200, 2200, 1000, so it's up around 3200 now. And I also replaced a couple of these 470s at 35s with 470s. They tested bad as well, so this amplifier is ready to go. I tested all the other ones, they're good. Cleaned the board, everything's good, looks nice. All I have to do now is I scraped off quite a bit of the circuit glue, and it was all over. I'm going to anchor these caps down with some silicone, and we'll call her that. Alright, so I got the top and bottom covers off. There's the bottom cover, This is probably all tuner. And this is probably audio amplifier. Tuning block here. But we want to get into these controls. We have to remove the front. So I pulled the knobs off and took the 2 screws out. And there's a couple clips on each side. You squeeze it. You see how it's hooked. Pull this off and set it aside. Doesn't look like it's damaged at all. And then we have better access. One thing I forgot to mention is there's a lamp on here, and I think that's burned out, so we're going to be replacing that as well. So we need to take this cover off. So 1 screw here, 1 screw here. And let's see, the dial cord and everything is attached to the top here. So hopefully we can get this out with the dial cord intact. Let's have a good look at this. Take out this last screw. I don't know if we have to tune this. Let's tune it to the end here. It doesn't like that. Okay. And let's lift this off. Okay. So dial string and everything's part of this gear. Dial string, everything can be, just disconnect this wire. And we can set this whole assembly aside. I'll clean all this and then I'll replace that lamp. I'm pretty sure that lamp doesn't work. Now we got into the knobs. We still don't have really good access for this one. This one here is a switch on the coaxial, and then the center is the tuning shaft. So we're not going to bother with this side. We're going to deal with this side. So we might have to remove this board. Okay, so let's try this. Let's take out this board. Okay, let's remove this strap. Oops. And I think this has to come off too, because this is attached to the board here, whatever it is. Yes, okay. And we have a bent tab here. Just straighten that out. It's coming loose. We have a ground wire here. That's pretty weak ground. I'll have to fix that. Yeah, that's all one piece, so I can't take the side off. Back can come off. Here we go. Okay. Connector, connector, 102. These look identical. So I'm going to mark this one. This is 2, and this is 1. 2 more connectors here. motor wires and the head wires. So what I'll do is desolder those. Let's see here. Look at this mess. Oh, this cap is glued here. That's why it won't come off. There we go. Cap is glued there. Another ground. I have to remember where all these grounds go. To replace that ground wire is broken anyway. Alright, so I'll remove the head wires. Red is right, blue is left, and ground. And then we got the motor wires. Red's positive, blue is the negative. And we're free. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ESR some of these caps just to get a feeling how they're doing. I want to draw out these wiring for these two cables. Get the color codes and everything. I think everything's together. I'm gonna check the wiring on these, and I'm gonna see what differences there are. If there's anything weird going on here. And then I'll check the board I'll clean this and I'll check it for cracked solders, and I think I already saw a few on here. So I'll put this aside for now. This side here is the underside of the tuner. I'm going to check all this and clean this as well. Make sure that everything is 100% with the tuner. The potentiometer is actually got a inline connector. You can't see it in there, but it's this flex cable. It goes down and under, and then it plugs in. So I can take this entire pot assembly out and then clean it. One thing here is this chip has got a spill on it. I think somebody spilt something. Let's see if we can. CJ7600. But it's got some corrosion here on these legs. You can see that corrosion. I'm gonna have to clean that up. It's holding out. Everything else looks good here though. But I was just looking at the bottom and I was trying to see if there's any cracks. I do have access to spray in from underneath. And really nothing other than that. It's a ganged setup. You got on the very end, you have a switch, a push button switch. The coaxial one would operate the first one here. And then the inside shaft would go all the way through and operate these ones in here. And then the push button operates the end. That is a power switch. That's probably in the end too. And then the push button. Ribbon cable, you got to be careful pulling it out, you don't rip it. And if you really wanted to, you could probably put some deoxit on these contacts. I don't really think it's necessary. Alright, so we got the volume pot assembly out, and if you look at it, it's really an enclosed unit. There isn't any seriously obvious openings that allow us to just spray in a cleaner and clean it out. It's kind of designed that way to keep dust out. Now you can, although I don't recommend it, you can bend these tabs up. Where's my cutters? You can bend these tabs up like this, and you can remove this back plate, remove this collar, and that'll take the shaft off. But I don't recommend that, especially on these built-up ones. When they're built up this much, you got how many elements here? Looks like you got 1, 2, 3, 4. What do you got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 elements. Why would there be 5 elements? And then you got your switch at the back. But we're gonna just we're gonna do something a little different. Instead of spraying a cleaner in here, I don't know what good that would do. But what I am going to do is I'm going to give it some deoxit fader, and we're going to go with this, I think. And I'm just going to put a drop in under here. If you look underneath, you can't really see it either. Between the board and the pot itself, there's a little bit of an opening on this side, a little bit on this side. How many pots does this thing have? 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like it has 5 pots. Why would that? Doesn't make sense. 2 pots for the fader. Maybe that's a tone control, not a fader. No, there's no tone controls because there's an equalizer, that's right. Anyways, let's try this. We'll see how good we can get it. I'm just going to put 1 drop in here. I know you can't see it, and I can... 1 drop in here. I'm going to work that in. To tell you the truth, it really wasn't that scratchy to begin with. I think it's in there. It feels a lot smoother. And if you're really confused as to what does what here, you can get an ohm meter out and you can check the resistance as you turn the wiper. Looks like I got a little too much in there. It's kind of bleeding out the back. Yeah, I got a little too much in there. I got a little carried away. Clean this off. And that's about it. That's all. I'm going to leave it at that. Getting this back in might be a challenge. Now, what I need to do is I need to figure out this wiring mess here. We got 2 harnesses. I removed the grounds so I can separate the wires. I can see them. See, for example, these two yellow wires, they connect to the same spot, I believe. Yeah, I think they do. And there's two blue wires up here, and they connect to the same spot. There's two red wires in there, and they, where are the red wires? Yes, they connect there. And then the rest of them are your left and right channel. The red ones would be your right channel, the white ones would be your left. I need to get these sorted out. I'm gonna like draw a little diagram here. Maybe even I'll, what I'll do is I'll get my own meter or continuity tester, and I'll test for continuity between these, and I'll draw it all out. And that way, when I remove the plug, we can get it ripped back together the right way. Alright, so what I've done is I traced the wires out and removed them from the PCB board, and I determined that they're both wired identical, these two cables. The difference being there's 4 outputs here on this board. 2 of the outputs, I'm assuming, are for the front speakers or the front amp. 2 of the outputs are for the rear speakers or the rear amp. So I think what I can do is I can just go with the one cable towards the one amplifier, and I can bridge these connections from front and rear, and everything should work normal. There's capacitors, blocking capacitors on the outputs here, so there's no danger of doing any damage by shorting these 2 outputs together. It'd be just like combining 2 channels together, but they both have the same signal depending on how the fader control is set. But that'll totally disable the fader control, and it will extend this cable probably to the length that he needs. So I'll get on with that. I have to splice these 2 together, and I'll have to get some, I want to do it so it's nice and neat, so I'll have to figure something out for that. And I did check some capacitors on here, not really anything wrong. I got the pot is already deoxed. I still have to do the soldering on some of the bad joints here, and then it's going to be reassemble time. Alright, I might as well show some of how I do the splicing, because I know somebody's going to ask me, why don't you show the splicing so I can see how you do it. It's kind of a complicated thing. Well, not really, but you have to do a lot of forethinking and planning to get this right. You have to strip off the right amount, and you want to strip the absolute minimum. You don't want to strip off too much, and you don't want to do that. But let's go through this. I already did the right and left channel. Here's the left channel, and here's the right channel. The heat shrink split on me, so I just ripped it off. I'm just going to put tape on this. So the right and left channel are done, and I did the red wire already. So now I still have to do the yellow and the blue. So let's just, I'll show how I do this. Now you got to remember, if you got to put a sleeve on to cover the whole thing, you got to do that before you start tacking wires together. And this is what I mean by the planning. You have to think this through before you start. So I want to do I'm going to try this on camera with this thing right in front of me, the tripod in front of me, so it's going to be kind of difficult. But if I lay the wires out like this, you can see how much they overlap, right? So that's where I want to strip the wire from. That's where I want to strip off the insulation. Let's get these straight. Okay, let's go with that much. So even with that much, it's kind of a trick. You strip the wire as best you can. Okay, and then the other one. Now let's check this again. You can see they line up pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're going to get some heat shrink, the right size. This one's This one's too big. This one's too big. This one's just right, I think. And we want our heat shrink to be at least that long. Okay. Cut this and feed it over. And out of the way, because when we solder, we don't want to shrink the heat shrink. We want the heat shrink to stay cool. So slide it back far enough. Now this is the tricky part. Twisting these two wires together, and they don't want to twist. They always want to pull apart. But if you are persistent and stay at it, you can get it to go like that. That's what I want. Now we're going to solder this with a minimum amount of heat because we don't want the heat traveling back the wire to shrink the tubing, which would defeat the purpose of putting the tubing on. Right there. And ouch, 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 that's hot. Cool it off with my thumb. Slide the heat shrink over. Okay, so let's do the blue one. Same thing. This time I'll use a knife. And just roll it up against the, really lightly roll it against the blade, and it just comes off. My hot air workstation needs a new fan. Okay. Insulation. About that much should be good. We don't need to go crazy with the heat shrink. We just need to cover the joint. Force it on. All right. This is going to be tricky. And another thing you want to keep in mind is you want to keep all these wires the same length, because if you got some that are shorter, some that are longer, and then they start to bunch up, and then it's harder to do the final wrap because you got wires that are not laying nice. That should be good enough. Once I tack this together, it's going to stay. I only got the heat set to about 135 on this. It's turned down low. Okay. All our conductors are connected. I still want to insulate this, and then we have to connect these two. And we're going to have to add a bridge a little piece in here. I don't think it would reach. No, it's not going to reach. I'm going to have to get a little short piece. Alright, so I got some black tape here. Let's tape up this right channel. I'm not going to go crazy on the tape either. I just want to get it so it's insulated and it won't short out with the other ones. Place this in behind. There we go. I think that's going to be good. Let's give this a little wrap first, just to tighten it up. All right. Now we got to join these two grounds. I have some old wire here. I'm just going to peel off a chunk. Kind of how you do in way. If you planned this out better, it probably would have, if I would have stripped this back a little farther, I would have had a little extra length on this one. And I just had to cut these wires shorter and leave this one longer. But I wasn't forethinking that far ahead. So this is what we do. We scab a piece in. It'll work just fine. This wire doesn't even want to solder. It is so old. Let's get rid of this. Let's get something else. Okay, here's a chunk of 16 gauge. Brand new wire. All right. Give it lots of solder. Why not, eh? It's hot. Let's go this way. Let's bend it backwards. I should have soldered this side first. No, it's not pretty. Stop laughing. Okay. The electrons won't care. All right. Give this a tight wrap. And this could all be put back to the way it was before. You know, if you draw out the wiring and keep the end that I cut off, you could actually put it back together the way it was. All right, so that's taped up. Let's put this last piece of heat shrink on. Let's heat this one up. Turn up the heat. 160. I think you get the idea. A nice splice. Okay, now we're done. All right, so I got to change 2 bulbs here, and I'm pretty sure the only way to access the connections is to remove the cassette mechanism, which is not a big deal. Everything's pretty much disconnected. The motor is disconnected, the head's disconnected. What you have to disconnect now is the antenna, the AM antenna trimmer. It is connected to a capacitor, a variable capacitor. It's located right here. And we'll talk more about that later, but just leave that disconnected for now. And we will remove the transport screw. What is it, about a 13 millimeters, 12 millimeter long screw. And this should just come right out now. Oh, this is holding. Why is that holding? What is the purpose of this long screw? Let me get a better screwdriver. Here we go. Maybe it's a ground screw. Okay, whatever. Yeah, it comes right out. Oops, looks like the belt came off. Now I can completely service this and have full access to the bottom board. And I can plug in the volume pot again. So I got access to the connector. I can plug that back together. I'll do that. Yeah, these 2 bulbs, and then there's one on the lid. This bulb here is also dead. I'm pretty sure of it. I'm not sure if these are 12 volts or not. I can check. But yeah, we'll get these bulbs changed out. And it looks like the wires for them are right here. There, yeah, there's solder connection there. Easy to change. Let me check right now if we have continuity on any of these bulbs. That bulb's open. And these 2 bulbs are open as well. Yeah, so I'll pop new bulbs in. And another thing, I wanted to get this transport out so I could have a good look at this cap. There's a 1000 microfarad 10 volt cap here in the corner, and it looks like, I don't know if you can see that on the camera. It looks like the legs might be corroding, but it's hard to tell. It could be just dust. It's not green. Yeah, it's just dirt. Yeah, those legs are clean. Okay, that is it for now. Still need to clean this board and check it for bad solders. Okay, I got one of the bulbs out and I got it connected to a 12 volt power supply, and as you can see it's dead. There's nothing here. Let me peel back this wire. I need it bare. Just want to show you something. This bulb's burned out a long time ago. So what you do is just whack it and it comes back on. And I can now see that I'm drawing 40 milliamps. So it's a good way to test to see you know what strength the bulb is if it's burned out. Yeah, now it won't go off. But just wanted to show you that if you ever need to get a bulb alive again, just to do a current draw test, just give it a whack. So yeah, I got 2 more here. I'm gonna have to dig through my inventory and see what I have. I know I do have 12-volt bulbs. I just don't know if they're 60 milliamp or 100 milliamps or what they are. So let me check. All right, so I just finished relamping this. I got the 2 lamps in here, and I replaced the lamp in the cover, even though I haven't attached it yet. But I had a problem with finding bulbs. I had dug through my inventory and I only had 2 bulbs. I bought these a while ago. These are little tiny 3mm. There's supposedly 12-volt lamps, but I don't know. I connected up to 12 volts and they are really bright, like they're overdriven. And you know, typically voltage on a car system is usually around 14 volts when the engine's running, and it just, I think it was stressed too much. So what I did is I labeled these 8-volt lamps. That's what I think they are. And I just put a dropping resistor in series with the lamp, 82 ohms, half watt. I calculated the dissipation to be about 370 milliwatts, but half watt will do. So I just put that in there and put a little resistor, the bulb. This one I had, so I wired it in, and everything's ready to go. Checked it all over, checked over all the soldering joints. Everything was good. Replaced the volume fader pot, and that's good. I also lubricated the motor and the capstan on this, cleaned the roller and heads. One thing I still need to do is, there's something you should know when it comes to tape players. It's kind of a forgotten thing, I think, is demagnetization. This is a demagnetizer. I got this probably 40 years ago at Radio Shack. The label's fallen off, and but it still works. So what I use this for is just demagnetizing the head. You just press the button and just move it up close, and just give it some time to demagnetize. Machines that play back only suffer from this because over time the heads can become magnetized, and then every time the tape passes over it, you can slightly erase them. Recorders are a different beast because they have a biasing signal added into the audio signal when it's recording, and that kind of keeps the head demagnetized by itself. But players are different. They don't have that record option or function. So you just give it some time here, and then you move it away before you shut this off, and you should be done. And this can go back in now. It looks pretty good. I did a lot of lubrication on it, and it seems to be functioning well. It's quiet now. So we'll put that all back together. I'm going to put this all back together, and then we'll do a final test, because I think I'm pretty much done with everything I need to do to this. Got the cable extended, I got the pots cleaned, relamped, and that's all I did on this one. Alright, so we're back together. Got it all assembled. I'm just in the middle of testing it out. I did add a ground wire, and what it is, I just soldered it to the inside of the housing, and that provides a good spot to ground the unit. And it works pretty good now. Interesting to note that the power supply is showing it's drawing about 1.8 amps now. Before it was about 1.6, so I don't know, changing those capacitors helped in that regard. It is working good. The lighting is rather dim. I don't think you can see it on the camera. It is there. And there's lights on both sides. It's to light this up. FM's working pretty good considering I don't have a good antenna, so it is coming in weak. AM works. Must be muting. AM. It's just picking up interference, harmonics. It does pick up stations, I know it does. There's one thing maybe some of you don't know about. If you look inside here, on the right hand side, there's a little trimmer capacitor, and it's buried deep in here. Let's get a light to show you. You can see that in there. You can see there's a little trimmer capacitor. And you take a screwdriver. After you install your stereo and you connect your antenna, you tune it on the AM band, you tune it to the station you most frequently listen to, and then you get a little tiny screwdriver and you go in here and you just tweak this capacitor and bring in so it brings the loudest signal, and then that tunes the antenna for the receiver itself, and then it's done. Cassette works. Let's try it. There's no way to set the speed, so it is what it is. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to send it back to the customer and start working on something else. I got lots more to work on. So thanks for watching. Thanks for putting up with it, and hope to see you on the next one. Take care.